might start. I'm a bit of a wanderer. I might move. I might also fidget. So I'll give you. This is me. I'm on Twitter and I'm on Facebook, and I'm also at Colac Specialist School. So if you have the education email, you can find me through that. Just didn't want to put that on. So just a brief overview of our school to give you some context. We're a small school in regional Victoria, regional southwest Victoria, and I've had a cold this week, so I'm a bit snuffly. And so this is our school, and we do have a massive academic focus, but I also wanted to show you what else we do. And so this picture up here, we went on a 106k bike ride, and we took a student with cerebral palsy in a truck, an electric truck, and we got him through. And the bike battery failed. I think it was like 30 k's into the 60k ride, and we got him, and we were like, we are getting this kid home, and we got him back to camp. So that was a 60k ride. So that's us up there. This is one of our students that has quite severe ADHD and is often dysregulated. This was him at lunchtime, bouncing on a ball, singing to himself, playing guitar. This is our phonics session, and so we started implementing that SSP last year, and this is this year. That was only taken on Thursday. We are lucky to have an in-ground trampoline, which is fantastic for our students that just need to jump, and so they get serious air. We've seen some nearly touch the shade sails, and that's part of our regulation strategies in schools. Book week, one of our teachers dressed up as a dinosaur and ran around the school and made so much fun, and the kids just had a great time, and they just chased, and then someone scared of the dinosaur. But the majority of the kids were like running behind and chasing. And we took our senior students to the snow last year after being postponed because of COVID, twice from COVID, and we also took the same student with cerebral palsy on the snow camp. He walked down to the snow part. We put him in a toboggan and we got him down, and to get him to come, I told him I was going to push him off the mountain. He was very excited about that. There's obviously barriers, and I knew there was barriers, so the whole time I was like, I didn't get to push you down, but we actually put him in the toboggan and we were moving him down and then getting him back up. So that's what we do. It's my passion, getting these students out and about. We have about 50 students at school, and we also, from ages like prep to the year 12 stage, and we also have an early education program that runs as an intervention program from the 3 to 5-year-olds. So I'm a learning specialist at the school, and my focus has been literacy for the last 3 years. And now we're starting to look into maths, and I also work in early education because my background is language intervention, to increase the oral language skills of our students. So I've got 2 research slides. They're pretty heavy, but I want to talk about why. Why do we need to teach our students with intellectual disabilities? If you want to take a photo, and if it works, you might be able to read it later. But when they're adults, they have smaller social networks. Most of them are confined to their homes. They have very limited access in the community, and it's only normally with a carer or someone else. Literacy can increase these opportunities. They're learning to read and write. In order to access the community, they need to have basic literacy and numeracy skills. Many students with disabilities attend schools where literacy skills are taught, but especially with autism, they leave with quite low literacy skills, even though they've been taught literacy and communication skills. They leave school with limited reading ability, which is well documented, and a 2019 snapshot where they looked at employment rates, shows that there's a variance of 37% to 70% that are employed in open employment, but they only work between 20 to 28 hours a week. Now, nobody can survive independently on that income. So that's why I do this. That's my goal. So in 2019, we tracked our PM benchmarking data, and this was pre-COVID. I call this part of our school pre-COVID, and we did it for the whole year, and that's the first time ever our school had actually tracked data for the students. We found that maybe students might move a level or students were stuck in a level, and it was their comprehension that was letting them down, where we could not get them past. I'm not promoting PMs, that's just the data we had. And then COVID happened, 2020. I was lucky enough. We were one of the schools that were running for most of COVID. We only had 6 weeks of lockdown because we were regional, we were special. So we ran through most of the COVID. But I did have, because a lot of parents chose to keep their children at home because of safety issues, I had the opportunity to start really looking and deep diving into what can we do which is better. And I platformed off my language intervention masters to go, hang on, what do we need to do here? So we started looking at the dyslexia model because I thought, that's where we need to start, because we know students with dyslexia have trouble with reading and writing. And slowly over time, we moved into Scarborough's reading rope and the simple view of reading. I'm not going to touch on this much. I'm pretty sure this is probably the most known information in the science of learning, science of reading space. But this is what, through 2020 and 2021, we started front-loading the teachers with this information. And most of that was through all of our teachers together, and I was doing a lot of PD. So whatever I was learning in the background, I was bringing up to the teachers and doing a lot of PD. We were calling it PLCs. It wasn't running like a PLC, but it was a professional learning community. And I started with the basics of the 5, or the big 6, and just giving them reading around what the big 6 actually looks like and what comprehension is and what comprehension isn't. We also, Pam Snow puts the house out. This is another well-known diagram, and a really good one for us, because this part, if you have an intellectual disability, you normally have deficits in receptive and expressive language in order to get a diagnosis of an intellectual disability. And we're talking about IQs I'm talking about IQs under 70. And because we are a regional special school, we have all students from unaccessible to 70 IQ in our cohort of students. So some schools have an SDS is under 50, some schools are special and they're 50 to 70, so we have everything under in our context. And so our students come in this low level in here. Most of them don't come in with this knowledge. And most schools, they focus on this part here, the instructional environment. We need to do all of this because we are still picking up this part here in our school. This part we have addressed through our enterprise program, which I'll talk about later, in order to get our students up, out and into the community in as much open employment as possible. This is still a work in progress. We've only been doing this since 2020. So more research about oral language. And this is Pam Snow's baby, and I'm very lucky. I'm in part of the Solar Lab and I'm doing a master's research, and Pam and Tanya and Anne Southholt are my supervisors. So children that have normal language development come to school with a very good Tier 1 oral language, the main point. Students with disabilities are recognised to not have that when they come to school, and they're either underdeveloped or under-functioning. What's interesting that they found in the research is the parent and child interactions decrease when a student has a disability. Because we are social creatures and we love interaction, if students have an intellectual disability, their levels of interaction are lower, normally with their caregivers, and just not through any fault of anyone's, the parents aren't interacting as much, or they are overcompensating and talking for the child. Or you have siblings that are overcompensating and talking for the child. So the children that are coming to us are having a little bit less experience than what a typical developing child would have. We know that domestic violence, trauma, all of those things affect oral language and its development. So that's another thing, and that's irrespective of IQ. That is across the board, and we know through COVID a lot more students had interactions or experiences in that space. So that's something to take back to your schools when you see kids that maybe might have been okay, might not be okay anymore. And our general population, this is from 2009 though, our general population communication impairments range from 0.12% to 20% in the general population, not accounting for IQ. So it's a huge space, the oral language development. You might already, some people might know that, but that's another one that I'm driven by, these stats. So we know, I'm not going to go too much into this because there's a lot of information about dual coding theory out there, but the idea is that you're using your visual and your auditory information to be able to process information and store it into your long-term memory. And if we use both of those avenues, we're going to keep it in the back of our brains. That's not technically correct, but that's what I say to the kids. And we're going to be able to store that better if we're using both. But if you ask a child to write down what you said and you've got this going on and that going on, they're not going to be able to do it, any child. So it's a matter of working out when you're going to use things, when you're not going to use things. Ollie Cav, if you look up olliecav.com, you'll find these slides and some information about it because he puts out all these beautiful graphic diagrams. And most people have seen cognitive load theory. What we do in our space is try to decrease all of this and maintain attention on the teacher and what the learning is. And we do a lot of this working memory stuff. So working memory can change in tasks. So when you read, if you happen to read a report on IQ assessments and they note your working memory, that is a bit more flexible than maybe your processing speed. So you can like I've witnessed students before introducing SSP, they would not have been able to read 6 words like that. And through introducing SSP into our students, when they play bingo, they are now scanning 6 words and telling the teacher. And I wouldn't say there was any difference between a mainstream counterpart or a special school counterpart with some of our students. And these are students who have never read before. And if you know Little Learners Love Literacy, last year one of our students moved from, we worked with him really hard in 2021 just to get his confidence up with books because every time we gave him a book he would cry. 12 years old, really anxious kid. We moved him last year from stage 1 to stage 4 in Little Learners, just by implementing just structure. Structure and routines cannot be emphasised enough. If you have students with disabilities, intellectual disabilities, any disabilities in your class, the best thing you can do as a teacher is put all your structures and routines in place. That decreases so much of this cognitive load if they know what's going on every day. And that's what, I mean, we're a special school, we kind of do that well. We do it better now. So what does this look like in practice? We started off with the gradual release of responsibility model because our teachers could unpack that really well and what it looks like. And this is an explicit teaching model as well, where you are using scaffolding and guided practice to help our students learn. We have it so normally I do, we do it together, we do it. Oh, I swapped them around. Sorry, they're in the wrong. PowerPoint has they done it? Wait, let me think. Oh, so PowerPoint has swapped them around. So it's meant to be I do, you do it together, we do it together, and you do. So that this we do it together, we've put in to go alongside you do it. Because some of our students will never be completely independent in their tasks, and so we've put that in as an end point as well. So if a student is able to do it with another student and they have more confidence doing that, that is also our goal as well. We have multi-tiered systems of support. This is one of our biggest system change within our school, and this has been a very long work in progress. This has taken 3 years to implement. We have all of this is our tier 1. And that's practice right across the school in all areas of the school. So these things like communication plans, we have in every classroom, every student has a communication plan. So when any CRTs or anyone comes in, they know how to communicate with our students, whether it's through AAC, whether it's through PECs or a visual schedule, whether they're verbal, how much 1-step instructions, we go right down to that path. Explicit teaching, we've tried to put as much explicit teaching in as possible. Our visual schedules, we have a class visual schedule that the teachers do before the day starts. Some students have individualised student visual schedules on their table. Some have English broken down into a visual schedule. Some students have first and next as a schedule, and then others just have one. And so when we talk about putting in visual schedules in, it needs to be from right here, right down to this microscopic level. We've got Berry Street in place. We're starting to use walkthroughs for our instructional coaching process. We have keyword sign and we have ILPs. We're using the character strengths model to teach us our values to our students. We use HITS, gradual release responsibility. Our tier 2 is regulation plans. First, then visual schedule, individual daily schedules, function-based thinking, and check-in, check-out. That might be, if you haven't heard check-in, check-out, the student goes and talks to a neutral person, adult in the school, and checks in the morning and then checks out during the day. So there are tier 2, and tier 1, we're using the PTR, prevent, teach, reinforce. We have behaviour support plans, functional behaviour assessment, crisis plans, individual programs for our students with complex needs, check-in, check-out, and one-to-one academic support. And that's where I do a bit of the tutoring in this space and in this space here. We don't have any student on a behaviour support plan. We don't have any students with crisis plans now. Our violence has decreased. We hardly have any incidences because we've implemented this across the school. and we have our students at the centre. What does this look like? We've broken down, in order to implement this program, we've broken down, if you want these, I'm happy to share these and how it's worked for us. It's very explicit and it's very low level, just to be aware. We haven't got up to the paragraph level in our writing yet. We're starting now with one of our students who's at grade 3 level in their writing. But I'm happy to share them. Just if you're on Twitter, just give me a DM. But if you want, you can just leave your details. And so we've broken it down. These are 2 examples. This is normally broken down more explicitly, but we've got a whole English planning, and then we have mentor text planning, and then we have our lesson structure and how it looks within a lesson. And then we have our lesson structure according to the walkthrough. So when I made this, only the yellow book was out. So I've aligned explicit teaching model into the walkthrough's yellow book and what you could use in those spots. This part here is because some students only have small group and some are independent, so they are lumped together. This is our English Tier 1, Tier 2 and Tier 3. So in our Tier 1, it's the 80% classroom instruction GRR model. Tier 2 is our small group targeted intervention. They might be removed from class to get more intensive stuff with me. And the Tier 3 is when we are focusing mainly on communication skills and getting our students able to communicate. What we found is the students that have come to school with devices are actually not wanting to use them because they're preferring to use their voice. And because of our phonics program, they're improving their communication. And because of our writing program, they're improving their communication. So it's become this full, all-round process. So last year we started to look at how do we improve the oral communication for our students. And so we started to put language for learning in place, which is an explicit direct instruction program. It's designed for EAL students, but it's to improve our students' ability to communicate and understand the language in the classroom, because we assume that we teach our students everything, absolutely everything. So we assume that when they come to us, we need to teach them absolutely everything. And so that's a way that we can get explore and manage all those requirements at that Tier 1 level. This green section, so they finish about here. So these students here are above 12, and so that's when we start looking at their career options and we start putting career action plans in place. That is part of our mentor text structure, where we actually break down what they need to know for the career action plans. We break down the vocabulary, we break down what it might look like, and we start talking about what jobs they might want to do. And I cannot recommend Behind the News. That is so fantastic for background knowledge. We used it right through COVID, and it explained everything so beautifully to the students, and then we did a lot of work. So they start moving into, this is a kind of a secondary age type program where we're trying to incorporate secondary skills in for when the students leave. So it changes a little bit, and this is our primary structure. And this is our enterprise education. So enterprise education is that the students have businesses and they run a business, and they start that at about 15 to 18. They are 15 to 18-year-olds, and they have to come up with a proposal. Our principal's in the back there. They have to come up with a proposal and write a proposal to the principal. They have to budget what they want for it. They charge the school, so they do our grounds maintenance, and we've got an electric lawnmower and a ride-on mower and all of the whippersnip. We've got the works, and they charge. So they charge the school how many hours they are doing on grounds maintenance. And then that money goes back into a program for them. And at the end of the year, they will get this massive celebration. And so the students get to choose where they want to go at the end. So we run a cafe. The students are learning how to do barista coffees. We're very lucky as staff because they come around and take our orders on Wednesdays and Thursdays. They'll come around and take our orders, and they know how to do flat whites, cappuccinos, everything. And so they're doing all of that. And then we have a crafty crew, and we're just laid out, I think, $3,000 for a 3D printer because the proposal was fantastic for one of our students. And that's where we're going to put some of that functional literacy in place around reading the manual and using that technology, because that's his passion, is creating stuff. And the crafty crew also make stuff for our Father's Day stall, our Mother's Day stall, and any other events. And what we have found in the last 3 years of doing this, we have had one of our students graduated. She came back and did a Cert 2 community with us in our school. She's at Macca's full time. We put some of our students into Macca's for work experience, and she was their team leader, and she's trained them at Macca's now. We've just had a student who's turned 18 because they stay with us for their whole 18th year. They're going into employment at McDonald's, full-time employment at McDonald's. We have had one student who's working for the Colac Otway Shire, and he was nominated for Trainee of the Year last year and got to go to Melbourne and got to go to the dinner. And that is open employment without any support workers. So it is possible. That's what we're working towards. And that's been Cameron's, our principal's project, to get this off the ground and to get this spot happening, as well as all of this. This is where it gets complicated, and this is the conversation that most mainstream teachers will ask me. How do you make it work in my school with my students? This was only my brain had to work this out, how to do it. So this was only worked out at the end of last year, and I went to Linnea Erie, and I put more of this part into our structure. We use only decodable readers. I hid all the PMs and somewhere in the school. They are still on site. I asked all the teachers to bring them to me, and I put them in boxes and I hid them. So they are still on site. We will find a repurpose for them, but at the moment there are none around. I'm ruthless. And so we have Little Learners, Dandelion, and we use all the catch-up readers plus the Rip Rap Club series because they're really cool chapter books. I've read a few of them. It's like Home and Away for teenagers. Fantastic, easy to read.
Sorry, what was that one?
Rip Rap books. So they have two. They have a club series and then a series. The club series is probably 12 to 14-year-olds, and the other ones are a bit higher. They just have a bit more content that is more suited to Home and Away. Whatever you see on Home and Away is in those books. And one of the books is called My School is Rubbish. That's a hit at our school. And so we've had one student came to us from grade 6 into our Year 7 cohort. We get a cohort, really young cohort, and then we have normally a cohort that comes in at that 4, 5, 6 level, Year 7, Year 8. Sometimes up to Year 9. And she came in, has had balanced literacy her whole schooling life, not able to even read simple CVC, your SAT-PIN words, devastated. I sat with her, she almost cried when I gave her a book. She's only been with us, she started transitioning last year. She's already mastered stage 2. We're about to put her into stage 3. And I asked her at the very start, do you want to learn to read? And she said yes. And every time she reads, you just see that joy. Their confidence grows. They walk taller. Just the ability to read we see so many more skills developed just from that confidence. So we have down this, it's very fluid. So down the bottom, we use sound boxes for our pre-alphabetic students to introduce them to it. They are normally, they need lots of high regulation strategies. Sometimes it might be 5 minutes a day. Sometimes it might be half an hour. Depends on their day. But we start them where they need to be. We're also doing core vocabulary and communication in that space. And then as they move up into that middle primary, so they're using Little Learners Love Literacy. It is a fantastic program. There is engagement. There's resources. There's games. We find that that's the most valuable at that lower level when the students are trying to learn how to learn and sitting down and engagement. And even there's art in there. And I know some people say there shouldn't be art in it. I'm sorry, some students need to engage through that process. And so we do that. And then as they move up, depending on their age, they might jump into that Sounds Right. So I'm Sounds Right trained. We have another teacher that's Sounds Right trained. Trying to get more training. It's really hard to get Sounds Right training in person. So we're on that process to train up another 2 teachers that sit in that middle primary, upper primary space. And they still sit, some of our students still sit in this section here. What we've found is if a student comes in that is sitting around here at this level, they have good learning skills. So we have dropped some of our students down into this box here, and as they learn and as they grow, then we bump them back out. We're starting to use the grammar project at the moment because some of our teachers aren't trained, so we're still using the Little Learners Love Literacy resources. We're just doing it more explicitly with not as many worksheets. We use the sound check for that level for the Little Learners Love Literacy, and our readers are those catch-up readers at that level, whereas at the lower levels we're using more of the decodable readers. But some of our teenage students actually prefer the Little Learners readers, so it's very open to preference. I say to the staff, whatever they decide to choose. Obviously the kids in those lower levels of primary don't go into that higher level stuff until they're ready, but the other students can choose. So it's very flexible. We just have the boxes in the library. So that's how it looks. We also run. So Monday to Thursday, our students, so I've tested so many students. We've put them into stages according to Little Learners, even though we have Sounds Right in the mix. We're testing Little Learners things because you need one scope and sequence. So tested them out, we've put them in the data wall. We're grouping students now. So from 9:15 to 10 a.m, from Monday to Thursday, the students get told it's phonics time. Some get out of their chair, go into the next class, sit on the floor, and they start. We've never had that before. It is the most calmest time of the day at our school. Our schools are really noisy places. There's pin drops. They love it. What some of the when it was started to be talked about, some of the teachers were worried about the transitions because we know, especially with students with ASD, they don't transition well. So we talked about it as a staff. We assigned the teachers, we assigned our ES to the groups. We left it for a week. We came back on the Monday. We had another meeting with the teachers. We said, all right, we're starting it tomorrow. This case, we didn't do any pre-warning of the students. Sometimes pre-warning them makes them more anxious. So we know our students well enough to decide when we need to pre-warn and when we don't. You don't always need to pre-warn the students. Sometimes that anxiety is more detrimental to them than actually knowing. We said to the teachers at 9:15, I walked around the Tuesday, made sure the students went to their different groups. They all kind of wandered around. They went to where they went. I'm like, wow. I walked around, Cameron walked around, and we were like, oh my gosh, how have we managed this? And the Wednesday, they just did it. No trouble. That transition was beautiful. Now the teachers just say, it's time for next time, and the kids that need to move, they get up and go. And the students that are a bit dysregulated in their normal classrooms, they walk into another classroom, they sit on the floor, they have their whiteboard, they have their texter or whatever resources the teacher has, and they just sit there. We still have a bit of noise. Some of our students are really noisy still, but they do it. They know what they're doing. We've built those, and we built all those structures in. I'll question at the end. We also, our mentor texts are allocated for the year. We use PyCorbett, we use the DSF spines, we use the plagues to decide what books we're using, and CB setup. So we're going back to what we know works, and they are aligned to either a humanities or a science. So we're trying to integrate as much background knowledge and as much repetition in as possible. This iceberg we're probably going to carry over into term 2 for our upper primary, lower secondary students, because they're really loving it. And our teacher, she's got the globe out, and at the moment they're tracking the Arctic tern bird of where the bird will migrate. So that's how we're incorporating background knowledge. What we have found along the way for our some of our students, they might know the word cat, they will know how to spell cat, but they know of their cat at home, and they actually haven't put the two together. And sometimes we've had times where we're thinking, what's going on? Like, how come they haven't joined it? So now we've introduced visuals in to help the students understand what it actually is, so they can conceptualise that this word means this. You know, we're all special letters, and we still come up with these problems where we just think, oh, what's going on? And we will have to brainstorm. So we're trialling this at the moment. And that's the Little Learners person. I think his name's Tim. Thank you. That's a pit. It's really hard to find a picture of a pit. So there's going to obviously have to be more explanation for our students about what a pit is. We use keyword sign. And so I've just got this. We teach narrative at the lower levels, and we move on to expository text as soon as they hit that upper primary, because we want the narrative, the oral language down the bottom. So this came in, and I made that. This came in because this is normally what happens when you're teaching narrative, and I made this to say we can teach that, but we're giving our students more concept, and we're giving our students a bigger understanding of what where means if we're using our colourful semantics. So that's the other thing we use as part of our program. How much time have I got? And imagery around everything. This is preps, lower, middle, and upper classes in the school. Just for different, just so you get an idea of how it works across their different books. That's one of my favourites. Results. This is a Little Learner scope and sequence data. Obviously, there's no names. At the start, when I tested in term 2 of last year, I could only put 10 students into a spreadsheet. By the end of the year, in term 4, I had 27 that I was able to sit down and test the whole 1 to 4.
Charlotte,
yes.
I found that I was lucky enough to go on a couple of reviews of some special ed schools, and just your story amplifies to me the problem that the workload that you know, special ed is in the communication, because you've got to access the kids' knowledge in so many different ways, and that when you're trying to use great standardised tests and that, just how much work you guys have to do to even just get a child to be able to show you what they know. Is it, I went away and I was just at the College of the Deaf, and it's all the same problem. Where are you getting the support from the to access these standardised, so you guys don't have to can share some of the workload on and being able to amplify and show that this does work.
I've started a COP.
Excellent.
I've started a COP for
it's
special
just
schools.
so much work, and I feel like it's harder to share the stories of success because you can't use the common, and that's where it kind of goes into the low expectations for some of our disability schools to say that, so you've got these high expectations and you can demonstrate the results, but what's the, doesn't choose to do it, they haven't got the same amount.
I've started a COP for special schools. It's not DET recognised, it is me just saying to schools going, hello, I'm here, we're here, there's a few of us.
There's a few networks that might be
and there's a few schools that are already doing this, so I'm hoping to draw on that knowledge as well for different areas.
Someone indeed should be helping you to do this.
This is out of our cohort of 40 students, and we know there's about 1 to 5%. We're trying to get it down to 1% of students that may never be able to, and that's the reality. It's just the reality. But if we can get it down to 1, that is like amazing. So our stage 4 to 5 at the start we had that, and then we see the gaps closing. I've got other data, but I won't. And this is what I'm probably the most proudest about. Our students, we're using the Australian Criterion Framework just to be able to tick off the skills the students need in writing. And through our mentor text work, our students, so this yellow group here were our prep students last year. This is 0.5. We have really small classrooms, so we had 4 in that club. We had 5, but one of our students has left this year to go. It's very transitional, our community as well. But it's 3 of our students is only 6 months behind in writing. This student here has complex needs, but we've got up to C. And our pink students they have had about 3 years, 2 to 3 years of this with a bit of unlearning in that process. And we've got D and this group, and we've got F now. Our goal is to catch these students. And we have our outlier. So this student here in 2021, I did a past assessment on her. She got 4. We started doing SSP, something clicked, and she went. And then I did another assessment, and she got up to, I think, about 30. And then by the next term, she was 52. Wow. She reads independently. Her comprehension is still developing, but it's showing in her writing. And there's such a correlation between being able to read and being able to write. Yeah. But that's the proudest thing, because I think if the students can write, we've got them. That's the highest order skill. So if our students are able to write, we are moving them along. So what do they need? Through this process and through research, and I've been teaching since 2012 in special schools. I was an aide previously, so I've been in special schools since 2008. This is a really good quote. Students with disorders of ID benefited from interventions focusing on decoding strategies, often combined with sight, word and supplemental instructions appropriate to the participants' adaptive and cognitive skills. This was a meta-analysis done in 2021 of all the research out there. So it's not always cut and dry with what the science of reading world tells you. High expectations. We have incredibly high expectations that also adapt to the students. Time, a lot of time. Some of our students might move a little bit in a year. Practice and repetition, a lot of practice and repetition. I cannot emphasise how much practice. Like some of our students need 600 repetitions to be able to put it into their long-term memory. And not teach one thing at one time. Either teach a skill or a concept. If you're trying to teach a new game, teach the skill of the game, and then introduce the concept of the game. And this learning requires the construction of knowledge. Construction is not facilitated by withholding information from students, and that's why our camps and our extracurricular stuff is developing all that background knowledge as well. And I don't think we have time for questions.